Hello and welcome. I'm Patrick Cunningham, and along with Judy Colby-George, we'll be your moderators for this virtual MEGUG Brown Bag Lunch and Learn. All attendees are in listen-only mode, but if you have any questions for any of our presenters or any of us at any time, please just use the questions panel and we'll do our best to answer them. Oops, didn't mean to advance that. We're excited to be hosting our first MEGUG Virtual Lunch and Learn of 2021. If we can't do it, you don't need it. Retail GIS with Rob George. So we're hopeful that everybody's really excited to get things kicked off for the 2021 Lunch and Learn series. Rob is Director of Market Research with Rite Aid. He's our guest speaker. Just a word on the Maine GIS Users Group. It's a nonprofit organization that promotes awareness of and encourages the coordinated development and effective use of geographic information and related technologies. MEGUG focuses our efforts in the areas of policy liaison and networking, research, education, and public relations. The group facilitates discussion and exchange of information and ideas in these areas by hosting regular meetings, workshops, and roundtables open to both members and non-members. And if you've been participating this past year, you know that we've pivoted to these virtual brown bag lunch and learns. We've been holding them each month. And we're looking forward to 2021. We're starting our planning for the year. And we hope that we may get back to in-person events later in the year. But until then, we'll continue with our brown bag lunch and learn series. As you can see here on the slide, we have a new chairperson, that's Andy Smith-Peterson. And we also have two new members, Matt Doobie and Laura Tessel. So we're going to be working this next month or two on planning for the year, and we're very excited for the new ideas and the new energy that we're going to bring this year. But, excuse me, but you can be a part of the Maine GIS Users Group. You can join us for committees. Just send us an email at megugboard@gmail.com. Normally, you could participate in our face-to-face meetings and presentations and those kind of things. If you would like to participate or help out in any way, we can use the help. We've got our website, our membership database. We're trying to do promotions. And certainly, we always need presenters for our virtual Brown Bag Lunch and Learn series. It's been a little bit tough to get folks to step up to present. And I just wanted to say that, remember, it's just a brown bag lunch and learn. Consider it sitting in a room with folks as they eat their lunch, and you're just talking for about 20 or 30 minutes on some area of GIS that you do, your everyday work. We're all trying to learn and exchange information at MEGUG. So it doesn't have to be, you know, a PhD paper or anything of that nature. We would like to have you present. So please shoot us an email and volunteer. Our upcoming lunch and learns that we have scheduled thus far are here, and you can see that next month we've got an interesting talk by Matt Doobie, new MEGUG board member, on gerrymandering. Should be really cool. And then in March, Sam Knight from Blue Marble is going to talk about some new FAA regulations for drone data collection and the challenges and opportunities around that. He's a certified drone pilot, so that should be educational and interesting. And as you can see, we've got nothing scheduled for April, May, or June, so we would love to hear from you. And we do record these lunch and learns. We put them up on our YouTube channel, and you can see the screen capture of some of the ones that are up there right now, waiting for you to catch up on all that's going on with MEGUG if you've missed any of them. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Judy to introduce our speaker.
Thanks, Patrick. Just in case anyone has noticed the similarities in last names, I'm really happy to present my younger brother, even though he looks way older than me. My younger brother, Rob George, who is the Director of Market Research at Rite Aid. He does really cool things with GIS, geography, and data. And I've been trying to get him to give a talk at MEGUG for quite a number of years. But since he's in Pennsylvania and we're in Maine, that hasn't worked out yet. But now, thanks to the switch to online, we were able to get him to volunteer some of his time to be here today. And I'm really pleased that he's here because I think it's a topic that we don't often hear about at MEGUG meetings. So it should be something new and interesting for many of the people here. And he's really good at what he does. So I will pass the baton off to him.
Okay, so thank you for having me. Even though it's across the Northeast here, I'm glad, Patrick, you put down that it didn't need to be a PhD paper, because that's why I quit school after my master's degree, because I didn't want to write any more PhD papers. But I'm happy to share some of my maps and some of the things that I do here at Rite Aid in a corporate situation with GIS and everything else. Just to give you a little background, I've been doing GIS work for 20 some years, 23 years in a corporate environment, starting at Blockbuster, working for Sonic, Burgers, Wendy's, and now Rite Aid. I've mostly been in retail site selection, but as everyone knows on the call, well, once you show somebody a map, you know, they want more. So I get to spread it throughout the company in different ways. So let me get into my presentation here. We're going to talk about site selection, merchandising, and some of the other uses that we do use at Rite Aid. We'll start with site selection. So there are a lot of different factors that create this, determining whether or not you put a new store up, relocate a store, even remodel a store. But it's spending money to get money. And of those things, I thought the most important factors are the geographic factors, which include location to your sister stores and competitors, what urban type it is, relative strength in the DMA of the stores and competitors, the demographics, of course, the performance, the sales, scripts, EBITDA for us, and then some location characteristics. Do you have good access? Do you have good egress? Is the parking good? Are you on a corner? Do you have a traffic light? All that kind of good stuff.
Rob, you might want to tell people what DMA and EBITDA mean.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so DMA is a designated marketing area. It's created by Nielsen, and it's basically your TV zones. So where you're getting your local news from, like if you're in Maine and you get the Portland news, you're in the Portland DMA. If you get the Augusta news, you're in the Augusta DMA. And it's basically your local channels, and it spreads out the country in about 210 of these designated marketing areas. And EBITDA is earnings before income taxes, something. It's some financial thing. But it's basically how much money you make at a store. So typically, if we were going to sell a store, we'd sell it at about 7 times EBITDA if we were selling it to another person. So it's how much money you make, you know, what your profits are. So let's start with the geographic factors. So locations to your sister stores and competitors. So on the right here, we have a map. I have a couple Rite Aids on there. I have the trade area on there, and I show where all the competitors are, and I show how the value of being in a certain location and where the competitors are. In both cases, there are a number of competitors within the trade area. Not always the best. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, depending on the amount of population there is, who the competitors are. But you can see on the left, you know, if there's less than 2 competitors, we do a much better job getting profit in those stores. So it's over 300,000. If there's more than 10, the profit is less than $100,000 per store. So clearly you want to go where there's lots of demand and low supply. So just an example of that is these two trade areas and how they work out and where these competitors are, and just that one giant food market on the top of, or I guess middle left, does that really have an impact on that store? Well, it does, because it's inside the trade area, and some of those customers that live up between those two stores now have two choices to go to. Which one are they going to go to? If we look at urban type, what I've done here is shown how much money we make by urban type. So the more rural we are is to the left of this chart, and the more urban we are is to the right. So urban core, imagine, is the most dense residential and daytime population. And we don't make a lot of money there. Now, there's a lot of factors that create that. One is because the rents in New York City are so high, it's hard to make money in New York City. But in rural, the rents are so low that it's easier to make money. But also there's more competition in New York City. There's many more regulations in New York City. There's lots of different things that make urban core not as successful as some of the rural. But you can see, as you get further and further away from the most dense areas, the better it is for us to make money. And on the right, you can see kind of how we've modeled what urban to rural is. So the blue is rural, and the red is urban, or the most urban. And then there's different levels in between. The major regional centers and minor regional centers are those green colors, and the pink is suburban fringe. But that's kind of how it looks. And we determine a lot based on that. We actually have different models to give us sales forecasts for each store based on what kind of urban type the store resides in. Another factor is relative strength of a DMA of the stores and the competitors. So what's the presence in the DMA? Well, if there's one Rite Aid or there's 50 Rite Aids, we would do better where there's 50 Rite Aids, as long as we're not oversaturated. But we would do better because we have a brand presence. So on the chart on the left, if you look at script share and what the average EBITDA is, the higher our script share is in the DMA, which is just basically total scripts in the DMA divided by our scripts. It shows the better we are, the higher our EBITDA is. And you can see the trend line is definitely going up, but it's certainly a factor in how much we're willing to spend, how many stores we're willing to put in there. We have models of places where we're not, how many it would take to get to a certain level. So in our 5-year long-range planning, we certainly look at, can we achieve certain goals in a market before we go into a market? And on the right, I show store share, which is a little different than script share. Store share is just the number of total pharmacies divided by total pharmacies in the area, and where do we stand out? Where do we have our biggest penetration? It's certainly Pennsylvania. That's where Rite Aid started, in the Scranton area, and it built up quite a number of pharmacies in the central Pennsylvania and western Pennsylvania region. The next thing is demographics. So if you think about scripts, you certainly think the older people have more scripts, and you'd be right? I mean, as we get older, we start to add more pills to our daily regimen. I remember when I didn't even know what a pill was, and now I get so many in the morning and so many at night, just so that I can walk with my arthritis, right? And certainly it becomes, as you get older, you have more prescriptions, more maintenance pills. And really, maintenance medications versus acute medications are much more valuable to a company like us or any of our competitors, because people continue to come back. So if you have to take one pill a day for the entire year, and we can give you a 30-day prescription, we know that you're going to come in the store 12 times to pick up that prescription throughout the year. And clearly, as this trend line shows again, the older you are, the higher the sales. And then if we look on the right, if we're going to start locating our stores, I didn't put a legend in here, but the oranges are older populations, the yellows are middle age, and the green are the younger. So you can see that green by University of Washington, this is in Seattle, is young. So we don't have a store there. There's not a lot of prescriptions there, but I bet we'd have pretty high beer sales if we put a store right there. So, but we don't make as much money on beer as we do on prescriptions, so it wouldn't make sense fiscally. And then here's another one. If we're looking at performance, one of the other factors that we look at is how do we do in other stores. So if we look at these stores, this is South Carolina. We don't have any stores in South Carolina any longer, but we sold them to Walgreens a couple years ago. But when we did, we had green and black would be, green was positive EBITDA stores and black was negative EBITDA stores. And then what we would do, we would look at the counties and where would you focus your attention? I mean, we can't open up 1,000 stores. We just don't have that kind of capital every year. So if we're going to focus our attention, we'd want to go somewhere where we're already performing well. So I would look for more of the orange counties or counties right near the orange counties that I would look to put a store in to be more successful, as opposed to going into some of the yellow counties or light green counties. We just weren't successful, and harder to get a return on investment going into it, knowing that you're not going to get the same kind of bang for your buck as you would if you went to a county where you already have some history, you have good sales, you have good scripts, people like you, and just another way to look at it. And of course, the last thing we do is we always look at, access, egress. Is it freestanding? Is it an end cap? I mean, it would be real easy if we were locating police stations. We just put it next to a Dunkin' Donut, or if you were a Dunkin' Donut, put it next to police stations, right? It would be real easy, but it's not that easy with Rite Aids. So we gather this information. We have the real estate directors fill this out. We look at the location type. We look at, is it in a shopping center? We look at the visibility and the access. We look at parking, adjacencies, what is it next to? Like, we certainly do better when we're next to certain tenants versus other tenants. And then we look at growth in the area. Is there retail growth? Is there residential growth? Is there commercial growth? And then we look at the crime, because obviously crime could add cost to any location based on shrink within the store or theft. And is there any additional security measures we have to put in the store, like potentially put a loss prevention person in there to kind of monitor the store for any theft. So okay, so that was retail site selection. That was basically why they brought me here. But since then, this was 13 years ago when Rite Aid brought me in, I really spread my wings and learned a whole different way of using GIS within Rite Aid. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this merchandising piece, and then I'll show you a couple other examples if we have time. But on the customer research, I will tell you, this is one of the richest databases I've ever had to work with. So every script is associated with a person. On the right, you can see the dot maps. So I just did a graduated spot map of scripts for the customers for store 4818 right in the middle. The bigger it is, the more scripts they have. So imagine in my GIS system, I can click on any one of those dots and find out who they are, what their address is, how many scripts they have, how many dollars they spent. And then on the front end side and what they buy on the front, 65% of the transactions are associated to a household. So it's not at the individual level, but it's at the household level. And we can see what purchases were made by those people. So we can see how many people bought Miralax and Gatorade because they were about ready to go have an event, right? And we find lots of different things. We find people that come in that are diabetic that are buying candy. We find people that buy shampoo and buy, different types of shampoo that don't make sense. All sorts of different things. It's really interesting.
Rob, what do you do with information like that? People that are diabetic that are buying candy. Does it do that?
Yeah, well, we don't do a whole lot with it because it's not a choice. But we don't send them coupons to buy more candy for sure. But we sometimes some of the partnerships with some of our health insurance companies ask us to monitor certain customers with the customer's permission. I mean, we can't go into this database and just look up, what people are buying and what scripts they're getting and all that kind of stuff. Like that PHI is, we have access to it, but we can't do it unless we have permission, right? It's not like the old days when I was at Blockbuster and I could go see what Mike Tyson was renting. I mean, that was always fun to do, but with the information that we have now, we can't go in there without permission. But some of the health insurance plans actually work with us to get some of that information, and what they do with it, I'm not sure, but it's interesting. But after we have the customer, what we can do is we can assign a PRISM code to them. So PRISM is a data set that's created by Claritas, and it gives us the information, some of the demographic information for the customers. So, what their income is there a presence of children in the home? What type of employment do they have? What their age is? What's their tech usage, and a whole bunch more. Then we can start to generalize on what type of customer they are, and then what kind of store they are, and then we can help figure out what kind of product to put in the store for that person. If we find people with a lot of children, with younger children, we can put a bigger diaper section. And with a bigger diaper section, you always put a bigger beer section in, right? Because people aren't going out as much when they have the really young children. So, if we see that there's not a lot of young kids, we have a smaller diaper section. It's interesting how some of the product affinities work. Here's what the PRISM segments are. There's 68, and each one of them has an associated name with it, and different drivers within there. They're at the zip 4 level that we buy it at. So imagine it's 10 households, and there's probably in your neighborhood, in your zip 4, you're probably looking at 8 of your households being about the same, and 2 of them, one being way older, one being way younger, or way more money or way less money. But on a whole, the zip 4 is pretty accurate to what the household is.
So I may have missed where you said this, but so you're buying a list on of data on the demographics of people in the area of the store, and then cross-referencing it with your sales information, or?
Yeah, well, what we buy is a zip 4 directory. So when we geocode the people based on their addresses, we can get to the zip 4 level, and then we assign one of these prism codes to it. And each prism code has demographic information that we can then profile the customer. So let me show you here on the next slide. So if we look at Pop-Tarts, so I took something out. I looked at Pop-Tarts. So the top 10 segments that buy Pop-Tarts are urban modern mix, urban achievers, aspiring A-listers, American dreams, multicultural mosaics, so on and so forth. They all index extremely high to Pop-Tarts. We get a higher percent to buy that than there is in the US population. So they're mostly urban people. They're mostly mid-scale from an income perspective. They're mostly middle-age. They have an educational mix, so there's a mix of high school education versus college education. And there's a family mix, people that have families and people that don't have families. So we can then go in, we can market to certain people. So we can go into an urban area and we can do a Pop-Tart promotion to increase sales, or we can go outside of urban and try to increase our sales outside of urban because they're already buying them in urban. We can also target our customer database to say, hey, I'm really looking for mid-scale people because these are the users of Pop-Tarts, and I can target them from a marketing perspective. So all these people, even though we don't have their true demographics based on their zip 4, we have some demographic information about them. So if you look across the country, this is where you would sell Pop-Tarts. Let me zoom in here. So you would do better at Pop-Tarts in New York City, Brooklyn, Bronx, northern New Jersey than you would in, say, down in Philly. Philly, the people aren't as big at Pop-Tart eaters as they are in New York City. So based on the information that we got, we know where Pop-Tarts would be better. So one, we make sure that they're in stock there. We make sure that if we do any promotions, that's where we would do some promotions and different things like that. So it's just kind of interesting how you can start to take some of this data and really turn it into something that's more valuable. We can also find other things, other products of people and do cross promotions. You know, buy a Pop-Tart, get a free shampoo or something. I don't know why you would have a Pop-Tart while you're taking a shower, but you might. But we can do those kinds of things.
You might need to clean up after having a Pop-Tart. It's kind of
right. You might. So that's kind of how we do that. And then the next piece, which we're starting to get to, we haven't gotten to yet, is the location in the store, right? You've always heard the old adage, why do they put the milk in the back of the store? That's because everybody comes in for milk, so they walk through the entire store to get to the back, and then hopefully they pick something up along the way. So we do plenty of work with product affinities, traffic patterns, shelf heights, you know, where you put things, but we don't use a whole lot of demographics, but we're moving toward that. So as it's something that I've started to kind of really look at in the last couple of years is, you know, what's the value of for older people coming in the store, putting certain pain medications too high or too low, that they can't bend down and get them, or they can't reach up and get them in our stores. So is there certain pain medications that we need to put on shelves that are at eye level for certain people? Is there some more affinity work that we can do that, you know, in the I don't know, the wine aisle, that we also put some greeting cards, some, whatever. Are there certain things that we can do to help with the location in the store, and really taking, a CAD drawing and almost assigning it a latitude and longitude from a GIS perspective, and every store having its own position within there, and then really getting a good feel for exactly how that is. Now, it's not that we don't do it today, it's just that we don't do it with demographics, but we certainly do it. We put the shampoo next to the conditioner and things like that. So, all right, so some of the other uses, and I'll run through these pretty quickly. Some of the other uses that we use here at Rite Aid, I mean, certainly COVID, it's been on the top of everybody's mind. We're trying to convince the government that everyone should be able to get a COVID vaccine. So here we showed, I was on the phone with Biden's team last week to discuss if we only use the top 2 pharmacies in every state, we'd be in, say, Jefferson County, which is kind of, here, I'll just go to Erie County on the top left. You'd be forcing those pharmacies to give out 11,600 shots per person. But if you went to the top 5 pharmacies, it'd be 8,000. It'd be much more manageable, and maybe warp speed wouldn't be as warped as it is right now if we were using more people to help get the vaccine out. So this is one of the slides I helped to convince people to get more people access to the vaccine. We also talked about our stores serving the elderly population. So how much of the elderly population is around our stores, within 2 miles, 5, 10, 15 miles. Operations, we create the regions for them, which is nice. It used to just be they picked stores that they wanted. Now we use some geography to actually assign the regions. And then also we look at some of the vaccines and how many we're producing. This was an older map, but the flu, pertussin, things like that, how many vaccines and which stores, and were there any patterns to which stores weren't filling vaccines versus stores that were filling vaccines. Facilities, where did it snow, and should we be challenging the plowing bill? So we get snow reports, tells us how much it snowed. Our contract is usually they plow at a certain inches. Like if it gets to 3 inches, they plow. If it doesn't, they don't plow. But we'll get bills all the time for people, and it only snowed 1/4 of an inch, and we still get a bill. Also, when hurricanes come, we can put this cone of uncertainty up, and it'll tell us where our stores are within that cone of uncertainty. And we can get ready, we can prepare, make sure there's lots of batteries there. Other things, flashlights, water, different things that people buy when hurricanes are coming.
Speaking of COVID, did you have to do anything with regards to toilet paper and some of the runs on products that people went through?
Yeah, we certainly did. We had a lot of one per customer things and stuff like that. There was some questions on whether we were gouging pricing and stuff like that, which we weren't. But they were used to buying like a 6-pack, and all of a sudden we got in some 18 packs, and the price doubled or tripled. People thought we were changing the prices, but we weren't. We were changing the size of the packs so people could get more. But it was interesting as that came in. But certainly all the hand sanitizer, the cleanser, the toilet paper was all down to 1 per customer. Even the masks that we sell. Some of the other things, I don't know if anybody watches the retail news like I do, but we just bought Bartell's in Seattle, 67 store chain. I was part of the team that made the determination of how much What the opportunity was for us to get Bartell's, there's only 7 stores that were in a quarter mile, 10 total within a half mile. So it was a pretty good, not a lot of overlap between our stores and their stores. And it's a great addition to the Seattle market for us. Bartell's, I think, will be a great partner. We're going to keep them Bartell's. We're not changing them to Rite Aids. They've had a long-lasting piece in or presence in Seattle, and we're excited to get them over. That just closed last month. Transitions happening now. And some other uses, marketing. So we look at zip codes that are receiving circulars. And you can see in Orange County, low penetration of stores that are underperforming. So you can see where we're not getting as many zip codes into as many circulars into some of these zip codes. And then, so up in like Fountain Valley, we're only at 18%, and those 2 stores aren't doing as well as the ones down in Costa Mesa that are doing better. Is it all based on the circulars? Probably not, but getting more circulars there could help. And then, of course, we have over-penetrated circulars. So the San Quentin zip code 94964, we send 10 circulars per household. The problem is that San Quentin, the entire zip code is based in the jail, San Quentin. So we're sending a lot of circulars, or the company that was doing the zip code for the zip codes match for us was sending a lot of circulars to the jail or the prison, and they really weren't getting out to shop Rite Aid. So we've cleaned some of that up. We use GIS to do that, which is pretty cool that I could participate in that and find these little things. But San Quentin was my favorite.
That's a nice little bonus for your printer.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so we sent out an extra 1,000 circulars to people they weren't even shopping. So, and I think one more. So another thing is loss prevention. So we have a whole group that just deals with theft and how do we protect our product and things like that. So occasionally they'll ask me to make some maps on how do people break in so they could see any some patterns. I was looking for a map. We did one in California where it was up and down the I-5 in California, and we actually shared it with the FBI. We had this big meeting with the FBI because people were breaking in and stealing all the Oxy right out of our pharmacies, and not only ours, but Walgreens, CVS, and at the time Long's. But it showed it going right up and down I-5. So we started they started staking these out, the ones that hadn't been hit yet. And they actually caught the guys based on some maps that we had made, but I couldn't find it for some reason. It was quite a while ago that we did that. But this is just another example of loss prevention, wanting to see the different ways that people break in, and was there any patterns of how they were breaking in. So, and I think that is it. But you can see that's probably it's a little piece of everything that I do at Rite Aid, but you can see we do a lot of GIS work, make a lot of maps, use a lot of demographics at Rite Aid, and it's fun. It wakes me up every morning for sure.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah.
Are there questions that people in the audience have?
Let's see if we have any questions. While I do that, I think it was great to talk about the COVID stuff. I was wondering what role this work you do might play in vaccine distribution, and because it certainly seems to, you have the data, and obviously pharmacy is going to be a big part of that.
Yeah, there's a
Nice.
big push about 4 years ago where the pharmacists started to become I can't say it. Immune. Wow. People that could well, you all know what I'm saying, right? So they can give the shots. So, with that being said, I mean, it's probably the easiest way to get it rolled out. I mean, there's 60,000 pharmacies in the US. People feel comfortable with their pharmacists mostly. And it's a real opportunity for them to not clog up the hospitals, not clog up the urgent cares, but to get it to their pharmacists and get in there and really get their vaccine versus finding out another way. Plus, some of the bigger organizations can do a better job, probably scheduling, not creating these clogged lines that we're seeing on TV of, Florida, where we got, people just standing in lines waiting for their vaccine and everything else. So we have the tools to schedule, bring them in when they're scheduled appointments, things like that. So.
Yeah, and also I know one question that folks are talking about that could become an issue down the road is proof of vaccination. I would think that a company like yours and similar would do better with being able to keep track of it and provide proof if folks need that down the road for whatever reason.
Right. Right.
So you're buying demographic data, customer data for areas that you're looking at for either store location or store performance, optimizing it, analyzing it. How are you cross-referencing your customer data as well? So because if I come in and make a purchase, with a credit card, you do have some of that. You have that address information and maybe even other demographic information like age or whatever. I don't know what you get off of that kind of transaction. Are you confident doing that, or is that doesn't happen?
Yeah. So we do have credit card information, but we don't use it because we have the Wellness Plus loyalty program. So you get something for using your wellness card.
Mm-hmm.
So we mostly use that data to do it. But every store has two sets of people. There's the people that live around the store and the people that come in the store, and they're not always the same. So, it's interesting to see how sometimes that differs in the trade area analysis that we do to see that there might be a whole lot of younger people that live around us, but they don't come in the store because they don't have any needs, or drugstores really haven't been part of their life yet.
Right.
But yeah, we do have.
That makes sense. I mean, I guess where I was going is that's good to hear. It's because I know you get asked do you want to join the wellness program? Do you want to, every time you go to a store, do you want to be a loyalty member or whatever the heck, right? But when you do those kind of programs, you have to opt in for the use of your personal information, and that it sounds like Rite Aid is being conscious of not using people's personal information without their permission, sort of what reminds me of some of the European data laws that they have on the internet, those kind of things. So that's what I'm
Yeah,
hearing.
actually, when you sign up for Wellness Plus, you can actually say, I don't want any of my personal information to be used. And we actually have a column in our database that says, like, we cannot search this, use this in marketing or anything else. But yeah, we don't really use that data for anything but our own purposes. And on the pharmacy side, we really use it to help people do a better job of managing their prescriptions and things like that. So we don't sell that data or anything to anybody.
So, one thing when I think of retail GIS, when we talk about it as GIS professionals a lot, it's always people like to point out that Starbucks on two corners, on a Starbucks across the road diagonally from another Starbucks. Um, uh, and obviously they're looking at the demographic information and the traffic, and there's enough demand for them to open two stores so close. It must be related to how people access coffee shops, and I guess it's going to be that those are very urban areas. And so it's, it is kind of interesting to see the way you guys look at placing stores, and your market is definitely more interested in the rural area. And I guess it's related to, drive time to the store must be a big part of it too. Do you do routing or drive analysis of the populations that use your store, or?
Yeah, we have done some analysis using drive time. And one of the things that we do is we exclude any customer that lives outside of 15 miles from our store. I mean, I have customers that have addresses in South Dakota, North Dakota, Alaska, Hawaii. Clearly, I'm not going to let them help build my trade area, but we do some drive time analysis to kind of get, especially for new sites that we don't have customers on yet. We have a pretty good idea of what existing stores are and kind of what their threshold is of people coming at different urban types. Like it might be a 2-minute drive time in New York City, but it's a 15-minute drive time in, rural New York State. So with that being said, we use a different drive time and then gather the demographics within those areas.
And Rob, this might apply so much to Rite Aid, because I don't remember if those are franchised or not, but sometimes in places you've worked, the franchisees have different agreements. So when you're citing new places, you also have to take all that information, right, when you're doing your GIS analysis.
Yeah. Well, Rite Aid's definitely corporate owned. It's 100%, but at Wendy's and Sonic and even Blockbuster, we would build area development agreements for franchisees. So if we sold them, for instance, the state of Maine for a Blockbuster franchise, we would say that you had to develop 25 sites in the next 5 years, and they would have to go in and we would look at the demographics, we would look at the proximity, we would look at the population centers, and we would determine how many we thought that they could do, and then we would come to an agreement with them on how many that would be.
It's funny when you talk about site placement, things like that. The thing in Maine, you may not be aware of this, that I don't know if other folks on the call relate to, that has taken over is the dollar store in rural areas. I think it's the dollar store. There's another store like it, I can't remember what it's called, but you drive through these rural towns in central and northern Maine, and I don't know what it's saying about the demographics, from data, but intuitively you kind of see it and you're like, wow, someone did some demographic analysis and determined that most of Maine needs a dollar store every 10 miles or something.
Yeah, you should see them in the South too. It's the same way, right? So dollar stores have definitely, if you look across the US and who's grown the most in the last 6 years, it's been dollar stores for sure.
Crazy. Looks like I do have a question submitted, and we still have a little bit of time, so let me see if I can open that up here. Sometimes this interface is a little bit hard to see. Oh, okay, now I'm seeing my questions. For some reason I couldn't see them. First question was, are you using ArcGIS indoors to determine product placement? Also, have you given any thought to balancing customer service with sales by locating pharmacies in the front of the store for the elderly or differently abled customers?
Well, I'll start with the second one first because that's the easiest. But pharmacies like milk, right? So we put that in the back of the store so they can walk through and get the rest of the products. We do have obviously delivery, which is kind of counterintuitive, where you just call in your script and you deliver it to someone and they don't come into the store, but and drive through. But is moving in front of the store. I don't think that that's going to happen. And we use Map Info to do our custom mapping.
Mhm.
I've always said to Judy, if you're going to buy data, Map Info is better to use than ARC. But if you're going to make it, you might as well use ARC, right? So since I'm a big corporation and I have money in my budget, I can buy it. I use Map Info.
Is
And I've been
that
a Map
is
Info
that
user
Pitney
forever.
is that the Pitney Bowes side of it for all that demographic data? Then that's what you're looking at.
Yeah, we actually buy it from Claritas, which used to be a part of Nielsen, but now they're on their own again. But it is Pitney Bowes, the Map Info, yeah. But
Okay.
the address information all comes from Pitney Bowes now. I mean, they own that piece of it,
Yeah. Yeah.
They do.
the geocoding.
So another question we had is, Rite Aid sold its stores in Maine. What were some of the patterns that led to that decision? How do you trade areas? Looking at slide 2, how do trade areas differ from DMAs?
Yeah, so the DMA is pretty large. It's a bunch of counties. A trade area is just the primary trade area, maybe suburban area about 2 miles around the store. Rural might be 5. Urban might be a half mile to a mile. Now, getting rid of Maine, that wasn't my decision because I didn't want to get rid of Maine. We owned Maine. Like we were great, right? It was us and Waltz, I think, right? We're the two like major players in Maine, right? Either went to Rite Aid or you went to Waltz. But when Walgreens came through the transaction, they took anywhere where they didn't have stores. So because there wasn't a lot of Walgreens in Maine, they bought whatever we had. It's kind of sad to me to lose Maine, but because now I can't like go see Judy and have Rite Aid pay for my trip, right?
Yeah, yeah. So do you pharmacy guys all like have posters of like an old Woolworths counter, like you dream like that's your ideal, pharmacy
Right,
look? Yeah.
right.
Um, so another question we had was, we're hearing a lot about how demographics are changing, from urban population, suburban, rural growth as a result of COVID. Have you seen these changes reflected yet in your data, or is there anything, you're trying to anticipate, people moving out of urban areas, maybe they might be getting at, or things like that?
Yeah, I mean, some of our urban stores have taken a pretty good hit. I mean, especially ones that were around a lot of like employment population, have taken a pretty big hit.
Yeah.
What's the impact going to be? Is it going to be lasting? Is it not? I mean, a lot of companies have figured out how to do this virtual thing and keep people home. Uh, but um, it'll be interesting to see how it lasts as we get through it. But there's certainly, I mean, I guess a great example is Grand Central Station, right? We have a store in Grand Central Station. It's one of our best stores in our chain because there's so many people that used to go through Grand Central Station, and its sales have been cut probably 45% to what it used to be in Grand Central Station. So it's not that people aren't still going into New York City, but there's certainly not the same throngs of people coming through Grand Central that it used to be.
Yeah, that's an interesting reflection of that. Looks like we got time for one more question, and it's, what data do you use to identify residential and retail growth?
So there's a number of sources out there that we use. But instead of saying that, one of the things that's most interesting to me is the new cellular data and mobility data that we're getting from cellular
Yeah,
phones.
yeah,
And right now it's priced way too high for anyone to really truly afford it. But it's really fascinating to see the movement of people in retail and residential areas and see how that's starting to change using this mobility data. I'm kind of excited to see where that's going, and how that could be useful to us. And but we do get it from a number of sources within the demographics and other things like that. So
Yeah. Well, that's great. I think that's all we've got for questions today. And if folks, you have other questions, you can see our email on the slide here, and we know how to get a hold of Rob, and we can certainly ask those questions and pass them back to you. And definitely thanks so much. It was really interesting. Didn't think about how it was going to tie into the vaccination COVID conversation, but I guess if you're looking at any data these days, it always kind of ties in regardless of what industry you're in.
right.
So, good luck with assisting with the vaccine rollout. We're all pulling for you, and we hope that you're able to help Warp Speed really get up to warp speed.
Right.
So thanks so much for your time today. Thank you, Judy, for your help and for setting this up.
Yep. Thanks everybody for.
Yeah, thanks everybody for coming, and we look forward to seeing everybody next month. And again, thank you, Rob, and be well. We'll talk to you all later.